As they like to say, there's no place like home. It's good to be back in the windy city. You know, it's President's Day. Let's start off there. Happy President's Day. Chicago, the city. Illinois, the state. It's President's Day. This is monumental for the state of Illinois. Everybody should be celebrating. You have two of the greatest presidents who ever lived, hailed from the state of Illinois. Both served in the state house. Happy President's Day. Lincoln and Obama. Really two of the greatest presidents in the history of this country. And you know, they have something else in common that people don't like talking about. They both, in their own ways, made history about, well, something deep and tragic and sorrow that occurred at the very onset of this country. We all know Lincoln, during his term, fought the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. We know this. We know that Barack Obama served from 2008 to 2016 as president. We all know this. But both presidents were vilified, hated, called enemies of the Republic. Lincoln, his actions in terms of necessity that the United States be united, that in a lot of ways saved the Union, the Republic. Barack Obama being elected the first African American president in this nation's history. It was monumental. There were people who never thought they'd live to see that day. And they did. It was life-changing. It was affirming. But they were both vilified by large chunks of the American population for the same reason. Racism. You see, Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy. He left the Union. They succeeded. There was articles of succession. And you can go and you should read each state and the reason why each state gave that they wanted to concede, that they wanted to leave the Union. Texas, in its secession papers, to summarize, was so upset that the United States no longer wanted to do slavery, that they wrote exactly why they wanted to leave the Union. They said it was their God-given right to own an inferior. They didn't say human being. It said that they were inferior and that they were superior. And God had commanded them to do this. That's what Texas said. Now Lincoln, before he was president, long before he was president, wrote letters to his friend about seeing a slave ship loaded at a young age, and it being such a traumatic experience that it formed the way he would govern when he would later become the president of the United States of America. Obama, former President Barack Obama, you know his story. Raised by a single mother. Harvard. State senator. An organizer. United States senator. And then the presidency. You know about the Affordable Care Act that saved so many American citizens' lives. But there was rampant and vivid criticism. There were United States senators like Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee who said the Affordable Care Act was going to set up death panels. And you wouldn't get to keep your doctor. Even if you wanted to keep your doctor, you wouldn't get to keep your doctor. These were all things that conservatives, mainly from the South, said about Barack Obama, the president at this time. You remember, it caused an uproar that led to something called the Tea Party, where they would come to Democratic members of the House and the Senate, their town halls, and be very rude and disruptive. Just like you're seeing now at the school boards. They did it in 2009. You remember Glenn Beck? He was on Fox News. And they said he doesn't know what it is about President Barack Obama. It seems like to him, his assessment, and I'm paraphrasing, that he had a deep-seated hatred for white people and white culture. This was Glenn Beck every day at the board, saying that Barack Obama was a communist, a Muslim sympathizer and terrorist. So both men were vilified for the actions they took to repair and stabilize this nation. Both were from Illinois. Both were great. Both are still great. So happy President's Day to the presidents, past and present. Chicago, we gotta get this done. This is going to repair the nation. I know people ask, how is this going to repair the nation? How is giving money to individuals who never experience the thing that you talk about the most, how is that going to help the nation at this crucial juncture in time? Quite simple. You gotta look at things from a different vantage point. I look at this as an investment and also an apology. If the country has never invested and millions of its citizens. How then can the country ask those same citizens to do something for the country? You've done nothing for those citizens. You can't ask individuals who you do absolutely nothing for to help you when you need assistance. And some people will say, oh well, it happened such a long time ago. You know, I don't know rules against reparations. Well, I do know. People like Herschel Walker, Candace Owens, they're like, just get over it. It happened a long time ago, slavery. This is true. It did happen a long time ago. But it also happened for a long period of time. You know, you gotta be able to throw some things back. Right back at them. In Chicago, we know how to throw things right back at you. The Sour Cream Brigade. They're upset about COVID restrictions and the disruption to their life that COVID has wrought to everyone. Rightfully so, we're all over COVID. But COVID has been 2 years. Even if you do 1619 to 1865, you get 2.5 centuries of slavery. Well, let's say you start from the official launch date of the nation, July 4th, 1776. From 1776 to 1865, you get 89 years. So nearly a century of institutionalized governmental dehumanization of one particular group due to the color of their skin over another group was the law in this nation. The same people who don't want to wear a mask and take a couple of shots in the arm, and who are protesting and saying they're losing their liberties and freedoms after 2 years of inconvenience and some restrictions. Those would be the same people that say you shouldn't do reparations after 89 years or 246 years of pure atrocities committed against other human beings in this nation. Those would be the same people that will argue vigorously against reparations. So I just wanted to make that clear and set the parameters for debunking and dismissing that bullshit of an argument. It happened a long period of time. So we should dismiss it then? I'm curious. A long time ago. Get over it. Well, two things. The first being, do we tell any other group that's experienced dehumanization, that's experienced atrocities and sheer brutality, to get over it? In Germany, you had a crazed, insane, lunatic leader take power and brutally experiment and try to exterminate a group of people, human beings, Germany said never forget. And they went about never forgetting, but in a productive and meaningful way. They paid restitution, reparations, to the survivors and victims of their nation's atrocity committed against their bodies. They helped to form a state specifically for survivors and people of Jewish ancestry, a home, a place to call their own. The Japanese internment in this country. This country interned Japanese American citizens. They paid restitution and reparations for that. Nobody decided to name public schools, build monuments, write textbooks, and brainwash children besides Southern Confederate white supremacists in the South. They didn't do that in Germany. They didn't name any high schools after German generals that served in the Nazis. They didn't fly the swastika on state houses in Germany. No, they didn't do any of that shit that the South decided to do in America. So when people say, oh well, can't you just get over it? You have to ask, why didn't the South get over it? Because after 1865 and they lost, it was in 1894 that the Daughters of the Confederacy was formed. And the Daughters of the Confederacy was solely about honoring and paying great privilege and homage to the South and what they did. They went about building monuments to Confederate generals and soldiers who brutalized and tortured. They went about naming schools after monsters. But then they'll tell the African American community, you should just get over slavery. It happened a long time ago. Can you tell me why in 1894 the Daughters of Confederacy hadn't gotten over the Civil War? And then, you know how there's so much hoopla and kerfluffle about not wanting to teach children critical race theory because of discomfort. You know, Chicago, it's time to be frank. You gotta call out bullshitters and liars. I know that they're full of bullshit and that they're lying to you. But maybe you don't. Discomfort? Children? Really? These are the fuckers who have children of the Confederacy. Literally, where they teach from birth to 18 years of age. Bullshit notions about how the Confederate soldiers were the real victims and how slavery wasn't that bad in the South. The people who owned slaves or enslaved human beings, they were really nice about it in the South. They were just a little too cruel in the North. And that's why Lincoln decided to fight the Civil War. It was under false pretense. Enslaved people were fruitful in the South. They weren't doing so well in the North. Children of the Confederacy. You go and you look it up. You don't have to believe a damn thing I'm saying. You don't think that that's discomforting to teach your children bullshit lies and white supremacy? Somehow individuals enjoy being enslaved? That's really what white supremacist adults teach their children. Maybe they don't want the counter-argument taught. I think that's what it is, really, in essence. You know, to have descendants of slaves tell you to no human being enjoyed being enslaved. We're talking about repairing the nation. The critics, and there are many, they're like, how is this going to repair the nation? Have they ever offered anything in terms of account how they would repair the nation? Is my question first and foremost. And they haven't. They criticize this. So let me tell you how this will repair the nation. Firstly, it's a promise that you made as a government, a nation. So you should honor your word, your promise, as a nation. If General Sherman knew that you needed 40 acres and a mule back then to survive America, how the hell can you say you don't know in 2022 that you need what the equivalent of that would be back then? You're like, oh, and I heard this from their thought leader, from their intellectual whiz person. Ben Shapiro was like, you know, America doesn't need to apologize for slavery. The apology was 700,000 individuals losing their life. And Lincoln and the 13th Amendment. Wait a minute. You're telling me that an apology is just not doing something that was so atrocious and wrong to another human being? You just stop doing it. That's it. Literally. If you put somebody in a cage and they didn't do anything wrong, and you left them there for 89 years, and then you came back and said, oh, you can go. You're free now. And you don't give them anything in terms of resources. And by the way, you set up conditions to make their life difficult, even when you let them out the cage. You're telling me that's a legitimate apology. That's how we do apologies in 2022, I guess. No, that's not an apology. An apology is when you apologize for doing something, and then you pay restitution for what you did to cause the apology in the first place. That's how you properly apologize. Ben Shapiro's way of apologizing is a non-apology. It's saying, we did the bare minimum. We stopped the bleeding. Can you imagine? You're in the hospital. You get bullet wounds. And the hospital takes out the bullet wounds and says, now you can go home. We patch you up. You're not bleeding anymore. You gotta stop listening to dumb conservatives, is my point. You gotta listen to people who at least can, well, reason and think. This is about repairing the nation. And a lot of people will say, well, wait a minute. It sounds like shaming and blaming. No. I said the government pays. I didn't say they come and knocking at your door. Bobby, they're not going to come knocking at your door. Susie, they're not going to come knocking at your door. The only door that's getting knocked on is the Treasury Department. So you're the one making this about you and making this about shame and blame, when it's really about saying, wait, the government promised something and it never delivered, and now it's time for the delivery. You want to make this about you when it's not. It's about the nation and repairing the nation, not repairing you. Some people can't be repaired. They're like, why should we give people money? Especially people who didn't experience it. Well, firstly, you sound ignorant. Because you say, we're giving people money who didn't experience it. That's not true. They did experience it. When you and your ancestors are not afforded anything for centuries, you as an offspring experience that. You don't have a legacy built in. You don't have an opportunity to have shit built into anything. And I know what you're going to say. The counter-argument. There were white citizens, immigrants, who came over to this country long after slavery. They never enslaved anyone. Why should they be forced to pay for reparations when they had no issue or no problem? They weren't even involved. Well, first and foremost, they're not paying. But another thing you haven't taken into consideration is benefit. Every immigrant group that came to this country benefited after 1965 in the Civil Rights passage. There's not a single immigrant that didn't benefit from that. So, you can't say that people didn't benefit from ending discrimination and racism in America, the most savage tentacles of it. Because sadly enough, racism and discrimination against African Americans never ended in this country. It still festers and permeates all across this land. Every immigrant benefited from civil rights, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. None of that occurs or happens without the sacrifice of hundreds of millions of African Americans in this nation. You benefited directly from the labor and sacrifice of black bodies. So don't say you didn't benefit. You did. Chicago, we gotta get this done. We all know we have to get this done. Evanston became the first city in America to do reparations. Thank you, Evanston. Some people say, well, it's not enough. It's a beginning. It's a start. Evanston, Illinois, Chicago. Once again, you're setting the standard, the trend, in a positive way, like you always have. You know, I have so many stories about my time in the city. From getting chased off of the DePaul campus by CPD to organizing at Kennedy King College. Conservatives love to talk about the negatives about the city. The violence in the inner city, the gang members, the drugs, the homelessness. They seldom talk about the pride of the city. They seldom talk about the spirit of the city. They seldom talk about the people of the city. Chicago has been a great city for immigrants, for the African American community, for people all over the world. Chicago has been a beacon of hope and light in a dark, dark world. People who were experiencing the brutality and the sheer inhumanity from Mississippi, from Alabama, migrated to Chicago. It was called the Great Migration. People came to Chicago, the meatpacking houses, the car dealerships, manufacturing lines. They came for work. They came to make a better life for themselves. Lots did, but many didn't. There was discrimination that they found up north. But you found allies. Sears and Roebuck's were the first to hire African Americans. Jazz, blues, the boom boom room, all of those things were popularized in Chicago. You have a great history, and then you have so much tragedy, sorrow, pain. CPD, Chicago Police Department. From 1972 to 1991, you have John Burge, who tortured hundreds of black men to give false confessions. Genital execution, suffocation, burning the flesh, beating individuals with baseball bats and batons, pointing guns and doing mock executions. For decades, this happened in Chicago, the city. Not in 1861 or 1865. 1972 to 1991. Chicago, it's time for reparations. They know this. You know it. I know it. They know it. This is not about shaming or blaming anyone. This is about getting this job done. Repairing the nation. This is an investment in people. Citizens who desperately need it. Who were promised it and never received it. It's time to cut the check. Look, I don't get anything out of this besides sharing what we believe, what we know is necessary. There won't be any more talk after this. I want to send positive vibrations and positive energy. I don't even want to think about if we don't do this, what will happen. I really don't. The purple people's always nice. I say, we can do this, we can sell it. The others aren't nice, they're not going to talk. This is non-negotiable. There's no negotiation to be had. We've just got to do this. And this is going to benefit everyone. This is a win for everyone. Everyone gets a W. No one gets an L doing this. Do you know how rare, generally speaking, in life, when everyone can get a W and no one gets an A? No one gets to take the L. Everyone gets the W. That almost never happens, Chicago. But in this, everyone gets a W and nobody takes an L. Everybody's finally happy. This is a win for everyone. That means it's a win for the nation. You tell me something where everybody gets a W and nobody takes an L. This is it. This is one of those moments. We've just got to force everybody to do it. Chicago, I know you can force them to do it. I know the city of Chicago can force certain individuals to do what is necessary to repair this nation. We don't have any more time. This needs to be done ASAP. You look outside. You can see it. It should have been done. There's people, it's too late to have this help them. Millions of citizens. It's too late for even this to help them. Chicago, we don't have any more time to wait, to debate, to negotiate. It has to happen now. They know this. I don't care what some critics will say. They don't want to repair the nation, is what I would say. They're against their own fellow citizens, is what I would say. They don't give a fuck about citizens who happen to be different than them, is what I would say. So it's time to stand up and get this fucking done. This is going to help everyone. So tell me why certain individuals would be opposed to helping everyone. Maybe they're the racists. Maybe that's why. They only want to help people that look like them. That's a racist. This is not going to help just black people. This is going to help white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, purple people. This is going to help everyone in this nation. When you finally invest in people who you've declared undesirable since the founding of this nation, that lifts the whole entire nation. So the critics, tell them to go shove it where the sun don't shine. Because they don't have a solution to repair the nation. Quite simply, they don't have any ideas. They literally want you to starve. Because if you don't do this, millions of African Americans will starve to death. Oh, purple people's out. You're using hyperbole. People won't literally starve to death. Aren't they already in America? You go and look at the wealth and income inequality, the racial inequality of wealth. $116 trillion. An African American community only possesses 3.8% of that 116 trillion. People are already starving to death, unhoused. But why repair? Why the word repair? You don't think that there was damage done for 246 years of sheer inhumanity towards an entire group of human beings? You don't think there would be any repairing work needed? People want to talk about the literacy scores. Oh, look at the literacy scores in Chicago. Look at the literacy scores. Look at the math scores. You do know for 246 years in this country, black people weren't allowed to read. They weren't allowed to write. If they were even caught with a pencil or a pen, a quill tip with ink, paper, they were murdered, lynched, beaten, raped, cannibalized. You're telling me that has no lingering effects when you've given no resources directly to the descendants who those atrocities occurred to and towards. Don't tell me we don't need to do this. We all know we do. We got to get the job done. Chicago, the Windy City, the land of Lincoln, the land that produced Obamas. I know we can get this done. I have full faith and ability in this city making as much noise and clamor for this to get done. I want a victory for the people. I want you, the citizens, to have done this. I'll be the cheerleader in the background. I don't want to have to be the quarterback on the field. I want to be able to say, you did it. The Americans. You righted this wrong. You made it happen. That's the way I want the story to go. I don't even want to be in the footnotes. I want you to get all the glory. For Chicago, it's been a long time and it hasn't happened. I don't want to come out there and make it happen. Because you know what happens if I come out there and I have to make it happen. It's not going to be pretty. I want you, the citizenry, to do this. So you can all congratulate yourself that you did something monumental. Something brave. Something progressive. And hell, something that we all know we should have done a long time ago. But have been kicking the can down the road. Chicago, get it done. You have the people. You have the spirit. And you have the majority of the institutions behind you. Get this done for America. Get this done for your nation. Get this done for your citizenry. This is the greatest sin in not just American history, in world history. Let's take care of this one. We have so many other issues like climate change. This urgent that we don't need to be in qualms or spats. We groups among groups because we haven't done the repair work as people to people. Chicago, let's get this done so we can move on to bigger and brighter days. I know you can do it. Let's do it, Chicago.